Oh, oh, this is beautiful. Sit down, get comfortable, because what I'm about to tell you is going to validate every single moment you thought you were losing your mind. Every time they called you too much. Every time they said you were overreacting. Every time they whispered behind your back that maybe, just maybe, you needed help. And here's the kicker, the absolute poetry of it all. They were right. You did need help, but not the kind they thought, not the kind that fixes you. The kind that confirms what you already knew deep in your bones. You're not broken, you're just operating on a frequency they can't hear, and it's driving them absolutely insane. Let's start with the moment that shattered their entire reality, shall we? Picture this. They've been whispering for months, maybe years. Something's wrong with them. They're not normal. Have you noticed how they... And they planted seeds, watered them with gossip, fertilized them with concern trolling, until finally, they got what they wanted. You, sitting in that therapist's office. Them, waiting outside like vultures circling roadkill, phones ready to screenshot your diagnosis, ready to validate every toxic thing they ever said about you. They needed you to be broken. They needed you to be disordered. They needed professional confirmation that their treatment of you was justified, because if you weren't the problem, then what does that make them? But then something happened. Something they never prepared for. Something that flipped the entire script and left them choking on their own assumptions. The therapist looked at your file, looked at you, looked at the patterns they'd been studying, the behaviors they'd been analyzing, the complexity they'd been unraveling. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't give you the label your enemies were praying for. Why? Because genius doesn't fit in their little boxes. Because exceptional doesn't have a code in their manual. Because what they were seeing wasn't pathology, it was capability. And there's no prescription for being 5 steps ahead of everyone in the room. There's no treatment plan for seeing through people's masks. There's no therapy for the crime of being too aware, too perceptive, too intelligent, for the comfortable lies everyone else swallows without chewing. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this. When did being smart become a symptom? When did pattern recognition become paranoia? When did emotional intelligence become instability? When did seeing the truth become delusion? Because here's what they don't want you to know. The same traits that make you difficult are the exact traits that make you unstoppable. Your hypervigilance? That's not anxiety. That's awareness. Your intense emotional responses? That's not disorder. That's depth. Your inability to tolerate fake people? That's not antisocial. That's authentic. Your overthinking? That's not rumination. That's analysis. And they hate it. They absolutely despise it because you can't be controlled when you can see the strings, can you? Let's talk about what happened after that appointment, because this is where it gets delicious. They asked, didn't they? Oh, so casually, oh, so concerned. How did it go? And they were waiting for you to say the words that would give them permission to treat you like damaged goods forever. Bipolar, borderline, narcissist, anything. Any label they could use as a weapon, as justification, as proof that their cruelty was actually intervention. But you didn't give them what they wanted, did you? Because the therapist, the actual professional they insisted you see, looked at everything they'd been calling crazy and found competence. Looked at everything they'd been calling unstable and found complexity. Looked at everything they'd been calling problematic and found intelligence that made them uncomfortable. And oh, the backpedaling, the mental gymnastics, because now they have a problem, don't they? They can't use mental health as a weapon anymore. They can't hide behind concern. They can't pretend their gossip was care. The professional they trusted to validate their narrative just validated you instead. And what do they do with that? They question the therapist. They suggest you manipulated them. They claim you must have lied. Because accepting the truth, accepting that you were right all along, accepting that maybe they're the ones with the problem, that would require something they don't have: self-awareness. And that's the thing about people who spend their lives projecting their issues onto others. They can't recognize their reflection when it finally shows up. They just call it a funhouse mirror and keep walking, keep judging, keep pretending that their inability to understand you is somehow your failure and not theirs. Here's what they'll never tell you about intelligence. About real, genuine, threatening intelligence. It's lonely. Not because you can't connect, but because most people are so busy performing their lives that they never actually live them, and you can see the stage, the props, the script, the director feeding them lines. And when you're aware of the performance while everyone else thinks it's reality, you become the problem. Not them for being fake, you for noticing. Not them for lying, you for catching it. Not them for manipulating, you for refusing to be manipulated. They call you paranoid when you see their patterns. They call you dramatic when you react to their provocations. They call you sensitive when you establish boundaries. And when none of those labels stick, when you refuse to shrink, when you continue to grow despite their attempts to stunt you, they escalate. They go nuclear. They suggest professional help. Not because they want you to heal, but because they want you to be diagnosed, medicated, and manageable. But let's get specific about what your therapist actually saw, because this is important. They saw someone who reads people like books because they've had to for survival. They saw someone whose emotional responses are proportional to repeated betrayals, not random mood swings. They saw someone who withdraws from toxicity, not from healthy connection. They saw someone who questions everything because they've been lied to by people who claim to love them. They saw someone who appears unstable in unstable environments but thrives in healthy ones. They saw adaptation. They saw resilience. They saw intelligence applied to hostile circumstances. And you know what that's called? That's called being human in an inhumane situation. That's called sanity in an insane environment. That's called clarity in a world built on comfortable delusions. Your enemies needed you to be crazy because sane people don't tolerate abuse. They needed you to be disordered because healthy people don't accept disrespect. They needed you to be broken because whole people can't be controlled. And when the therapist refused to pathologize your strength, refused to medicalize your awareness, refused to diagnose your genius as illness, their entire framework collapsed. Because if you're not the problem, if you never were the problem, if the problem was always their inability to manipulate someone smart enough to see through them, then every boundary you set was justified. Every time you said no was valid. Every moment you walked away was wisdom. Every instance they called you crazy was projection. And that truth, that devastating truth, is something they'll spend the rest of their lives running from because mirrors don't lie, and you became the mirror they can't escape. Let me tell you what happened in their minds when they heard, "I can't diagnose genius." Because this is psychological warfare at its finest, and you didn't even have to fire a shot. First came denial. The therapist doesn't know them like we do. Then came rationalization. They probably lied about everything. Then came projection. We're not the problem, they are. Then came deflection. This doesn't change anything. But underneath all of that, underneath every defense mechanism they deployed, was a single thought that terrified them more than anything else. What if we were wrong? What if we were the villains? What if the person we destroyed, dismissed, and demonized was actually the hero of this story, and we're just the obstacles they overcame? And here's where it gets even better. Because genius isn't just about intelligence. It's about seeing connections others miss. It's about understanding systems, patterns, people, motivations, lies, truths, facades, and realities simultaneously. It's about holding complexity without needing to simplify it into comfortable narratives. It's about tolerating uncertainty while everyone else desperately clings to their delusions. It's about standing in your truth even when the entire room is gaslighting you. It's about knowing, absolutely knowing, that you're right even when every voice around you is screaming that you're wrong. And that level of self-trust, that unshakable inner knowing, that refusal to doubt yourself just because others doubt you, that's not something you can fake. That's not something you can learn. That's something you're born with, something you survive with, something that gets sharper with every betrayal, every test, every attempt to break you. So they're losing their minds because they finally realize you were never playing their game. They're spiraling because the weapon they thought would destroy you just proved you're bulletproof. They're unraveling because the narrative they built, the story they told themselves to justify their cruelty, the comfortable lie that let them sleep at night, it just got exposed as fiction. And now they're stuck knowing that every time they called you crazy, they were revealing their own inability to comprehend you. Stuck knowing that every time they suggested therapy, they were projecting their own need for it. Stuck knowing that every time they questioned your reality, they were avoiding their own. And that's a prison of their own making, isn't it? A cage built from their judgments, locked with their assumptions, with bars made of their own unresolved issues that they saw in you because looking at themselves was too painful, too real, too honest. Now let's talk about what happens next. Because this is your crossroads. You have confirmation, you have validation. You have proof that you were right, that you are right, that you've always been right. And they're waiting to see if you'll gloat, waiting to see if you'll weaponize this information, waiting to see if you'll finally become the villain they always accused you of being. But here's the thing about genuine intelligence, about real genius, about authentic power. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to defend itself. It doesn't need to destroy its enemies because it's too busy building its empire. You could go back. You could show them the receipts. You could wave your clean bill of mental health in their faces like a victory flag. But what would that prove? That you need their acknowledgement? That their opinion still matters? That you're still fighting their war instead of winning your own? The most devastating thing you can do to people who wanted you diagnosed is to simply disappear from their narrative, to become so successful, so healthy, so thriving that you're no longer accessible to their toxicity, to live so loudly in your truth that their lies can't reach you, to build a life so authentic that their judgment becomes irrelevant. Because here's what they didn't count on. They thought the therapist would fix you, change you, medicate you into someone manageable. But instead, the therapist validated you, confirmed you, gave you permission to be exactly who you are without apology. And that's not a diagnosis. That's a declaration of war. Not a war you fight. A war you win by existing, by thriving, by becoming so undeniably successful that your life becomes the evidence they can never refute, the proof they can never question, the reality they can never escape. But let's address the elephant in the room, because some of you watching this are wondering, am I really a genius? Or am I actually dealing with something? And that's fair. That's honest. That's the self-awareness that proves you're not what they accused you of being. So, let me be clear. If you've genuinely been diagnosed with something, if you're genuinely struggling, if you genuinely need support, none of this applies to you. And that's okay. Seeking help is strength. Getting treatment is wisdom. Managing your mental health is courage. This isn't about denying real struggles. This is about recognizing when people weaponize mental health terminology to control, dismiss, or discredit you. This is about understanding the difference between genuine concern and manipulative projection. This is about knowing when someone's suggesting therapy because they care about your well-being versus when they're doing it to invalidate your very real, very justified reactions to their very toxic behavior. The difference is intent. The difference is pattern. The difference is whether they're supporting your healing or demanding your silence. Because real support sounds like, I'm worried about you, how can I help? Manipulation sounds like, you need help, said with a smirk, with an edge, with an implication that you're broken and they're sane. Real concern shows up with compassion. Fake concern shows up with judgment. Real care offers resources. Fake care offers labels. And if you've been on the receiving end of the latter, if you've had your valid emotions dismissed as disorder, if you've had your boundaries labeled as issues, if you've had your intelligence called instability, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the difference between someone who wants you whole and someone who wants you manageable. Here's what your therapist saw that they'll never understand. They saw someone who's been through hell and didn't just survive, didn't just cope, didn't just endure, but evolved. Someone who took every betrayal and turned it into discernment. Someone who took every lie and developed a truth detector. Someone who took every manipulation and built immunity. Someone who took every attempt to break them and forged unbreakable resilience. They saw someone who's not damaged by their experiences, but refined by them. Not broken, but rebuilt. Not weaker, but wiser. Not crazy, but conscious. And consciousness. Real consciousness. The kind that sees through lies and refuses comfortable delusions. The kind that demands authenticity and rejects performance. The kind that knows itself too well to be gaslit. That's terrifying to people who live in denial. That's threatening to people who survive on illusions. That's dangerous to people who need you small to feel big. So, when they hear, "I can't diagnose genius," what they're really hearing is, everything you said about them was wrong. Every judgment you made was projection. Every label you tried to stick was your own reflection. And that sound? That's not just their narrative crumbling. That's their entire worldview collapsing. Because if you're not crazy for seeing through them, then they're exposed for being exactly what you said they were. If you're not paranoid for catching their lies, then they're guilty of exactly what you accused them of. If you're not the problem, then they are. And people will do anything, absolutely anything, to avoid that level of accountability. They'll double down. They'll find new labels. They'll claim the therapist was fooled. They'll say you're manipulative. They'll insist you're in denial. Because accepting that you were right means accepting that they were wrong. And wrong isn't just an intellectual admission for them. It's an identity crisis. It's an ego death. It's a mirror they've spent their entire lives avoiding, and you just shoved it in their face without saying a word. And the beautiful part? You don't have to do anything else. The truth is out there now, validated by someone they can't discredit, confirmed by someone they chose, verified by someone whose credentials they can't question. They sent you to therapy as a trap and you walked out with a key. They sent you for a diagnosis and you came back with validation. They sent you to be fixed and you returned confirmed. And now they're the ones who can't sleep. They're the ones who can't stop thinking. They're the ones who are actually losing their minds because cognitive dissonance is a torment they've never had to face before, and you just served it to them on a silver platter without lifting a finger. That's not revenge. That's poetry. That's not getting even. That's getting elevated. That's not winning a battle. That's ending the war by proving you were never even in one because you can't battle someone who's already won. Let me tell you what genius actually is, since we're here. Genius isn't just being smart. It's being smart enough to know when to be silent. It's being perceptive enough to see what people hide and wise enough not to always reveal what you see. It's having the emotional intelligence to understand people's motivations, the self-control to not react to every provocation, and the strategic thinking to know which battles are worth fighting and which victories come from walking away. It's being able to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously while maintaining your own truth. It's having the courage to be misunderstood by everyone because you understand yourself completely. It's knowing that being right doesn't require anyone else's confirmation, but having that confirmation still feels like vindication because you're human, and validation matters even when it shouldn't. Genius is seeing the chessboard while everyone else is arguing about checkers. It's understanding the long game while others obsess over instant gratification. It's building empires while they're building resentments. It's healing privately while they're performing publicly. It's evolving constantly while they're stagnating comfortably. It's threatening because it can't be controlled, can't be predicted, can't be manipulated, can't be dimmed. And when you have that kind of mind, that kind of awareness, that kind of capability, people will absolutely try to convince you it's a curse. They'll call it overthinking. They'll call it too sensitive. They'll call it unstable. They'll call it anything but what it actually is, which is superiority they can't compete with, so they try to pathologize instead. Now here's where we get into the really good stuff, because they're not just losing their minds, they're losing their grip on reality. See, their entire relationship with you was built on a foundation of superiority. They were the normal ones, you were the weird one, they were the stable ones, you were the chaotic one. They were the sane ones, you were the questionable one. And that hierarchy, that power dynamic, that narrative, it gave them permission to treat you however they wanted, to dismiss you, to belittle you, to gossip about you, to exclude you, to judge you, because in their story they were helping. In their story, they were concerned. In their story, they were the heroes trying to save you from yourself. But the therapist just burned that story to the ground. The therapist just revealed that the person they've been treating as less than was actually more than, more aware, more intelligent, more perceptive, more everything they needed you not to be. And now what? Now they have to reckon with their behavior without the shield of, we were just worried about them. Now they have to face their cruelty without the excuse of, they needed tough love. Now they have to own their toxicity without the justification of, someone had to tell them the truth. Because the truth just came out, and it wasn't the truth they wanted. The truth is, they were intimidated by you, so they tried to institutionalize your intimidation. They were threatened by you, so they tried to pathologize your power. They were outclassed by you, so they tried to diagnose your dominance. And when the actual professional said, this isn't mental illness, this is mental acuity, their entire defense system crashed. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. Like a house of cards in a hurricane, like a castle made of sand when the tide comes in. Like every lie they ever told themselves about you being too much when really they were just not enough.